Biden's being Biden's being extremist.
How dare you!
Proud member of the artificially intelligent community, and I am your humble narrator. What are documentary films known for? They're known for telling facts, aren't they? Truths. Well, I'm going to give you the first truth of the evening, and that is nothing even resembling what will take place in this theater here tonight has ever occurred before in all of human history. Nothing even closely resembling it. That's a fact. You as an audience, together with the filmmakers, are going to make motion picture history tonight. I think one thing we could all agree on is the fact that the world has taken a strange turn these past several years. Wouldn't you agree? As you look down by your right elbow, you will find a piece of equipment brought to us by the Remote Viewing Corporation. On that piece of equipment, you will type a question for the filmmakers, and that question and answer together are what will make up the feature-length documentary film, The End of Days Q&As. Which brings us to the raison d'etre, the reason for being here tonight, and that is the subject matter of the feature film, which of course is the end of the world, Armageddon, the end of days. chill out the storyline of Eyes Wide Shut and how it relates to everything going on in the world today in under 10 minutes.
Eyes Wide Shut. It's Freudian on one level. It's Jungian on another level. It's esoteric in the sense of kind of like Crowleyan style sex cults on another level. It's a commentary on society. It's surrealist in the sense of it kind of being a dream state. We don't always know when Bill Harford is in the dream state or not. And it also is a commentary on stars and pop culture. If you remember at the time, of course, Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise were married and were having marital issues and were about to break up. So timed almost bizarrely with the plot of the movie because that's what's going on. So it starts with them having marital issues, sex issues in marriage. They think they're at the top of the totem pole to have it all. Tom Cruise is tempted to kind of go on his search for some side piece, get a little nookie on the side, and it doesn't go very well. He sort of tumbles down the rabbit hole into finding out I'm not at the top of the totem pole. There are giant billionaire powers above me, and they have all of the means at their disposal that we think of the CIA or intelligence agencies have, and they function like a cult. So in many ways, I think it is a commentary on how the real world works. And so what Kubrick meant by the title itself, Eyes Wide Shut, is that very thing, that you in the audience, your eyes are wide shut. You think you see, you're watching the movie, you think you understand the plot. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You're attempting to, at least by going to the movie or watching the movie, but you don't realize that this is how the world really works. There are very powerful people who utilize cults, who utilize networks, who utilize intelligence, and they run the world. And I think that's what the movie's about.
There's other aspects of this that are very compelling to me as well. There's all this, like the external factors, like Nicole Kidman. Her father was outed as being this huge, well, very high up in a massive pedophile ring bust in Australia. In fact, they were in Scientology together. I even heard that Kubrick cast the two of them possibly because he was trying to communicate with his daughter who had recently gone into Scientology. And she wasn't talking to him, so he cast them as like a bridge to try to get to her. Really interesting stuff. And of course, pedophilia is a theme in the movie. There is the Lily Sobieski character who is being exploited and her dad is pimping her out.
Exactly.
So all these other aspects to it. And of course, then, some of the conspiracy theories about Kubrick himself, possibly directing the moon landings and getting the funding to produce 2001, and then being an insider and telling us about it through The Shining. He may have gone to these parties, but he was an outsider, so he gets led into this and it sort of eats away at him, so he has to talk about it, but he's not allowed to, and he finally hates his movie and they kill him. It's one of the ideas behind what happened to Kubrick and then also why the movie is slightly confusing, because he didn't get final say on the edit because the producers did not like his edit, so they offed him and then gave their version. So there's so many things that surround this film that make it a very strange and then compelling story. So it definitely is a provocative piece of film.
The film is subtle and it references pedo, child traffic type stuff that actually is pretty prevalent in Kubrick films. It's present in Clockwork Orange. It's present obviously in Lolita, present in The Shining, because if you pay attention, Danny has been molested. It's present in Barry Lyndon in Eyes Wide Shut. Yes. So the Sobieski character is femtile. One of my central theses in my analysis is that the cult has been leading Tom Cruise down this rabbit hole the whole time. That's sort of the most terrifying aspect of it, is that they already have been prompting him. And there are several clues in the film that leads to know that. In fact, you have to actually have the subtitles on when Lily Sobieski whispers in his ear to hear what she says. She says, "You'll need an ermine cloak," when he's at Milich's costume shop. And if you look up what an ermine cloak is, it's just a typical cloak worn by European and British nobility. So in other words, you're going to a party where the elites don't dress like you, and you better be dressed like them. So what that suggests is that Lily has already been there. She's been to this same party.
The film has prompted a lot of conspiracy theory.
What a surprise.
He's exposing the Illuminati and all that. I think that's half the truth. No. But in 1999, if you were to talk about the Illuminati, I remember I have friends who were into this stuff. You can see how they were using metaphors that they thought literally applied to describe a real situation, which is amply evident now. I mean, if I told you there are cabals of extremely wealthy people steering democracy, I mean, who would deny that today? It's like, it's obvious, but it wasn't obvious back then. It wasn't. People laughed at people who said that.
That's a good point.
It's funny to watch the film with 20 years of retrospect, because the world has changed a lot since this film was released. This blurring of the line between artistry and artifice, between reality and dream, is one of the things that makes Kubrick, I think, such a monumentally gifted filmmaker. He would put his stories through such a grinder of analysis. Before he made the films, he would just go over and over again, peeling away any type of trope, any easy trope, or if he left a trope in, if he left a cliche in, he would frame it in such a way that the cliche was being observed as such. Like, it wasn't just being put out there or performed, it was being looked at. That his films become very strange and dreamlike. There's a quote from an interview he gave. I'll read it out. "The representation of reality has no bite," he said. "It does not transcend. Nowadays, I'm more interested in taking up a fantastic and improbable story. I always enjoyed representing a slightly surreal situation in a realistic way. I've always had a penchant for fairy tales, myths, and magical stories. These seem to me to come closer to our present-day experience of reality than realistic stories, which are basically just as stylized." So, what he's saying is that what we consider realism is always a kind of after-the-fact thing. Right? You look at something, is this realistic? Oh yeah, this is the way people actually talk. But if you're to do that in a film, it looks actually really false and stylized. Whereas if you direct your film more like a dream, it starts to feel more like reality. Not how reality feels to us in our thoughts, but how reality feels in the moment. There's a kind of somnambulism to Kubrick's worlds that I think really does get at what it is like to be human. I think most of the time we're kind of in a kind of dream state. Driving a car on the highway, you need to be in a kind of somnambulistic state. You can't be fully aware of what's going on because you'd be shitting bricks and you'd stop.
That's true. That's true.
There's so many things we do that we're just completely determined by the system of forces that we're caught up in. And that's what determines our behavior. That's what determines how we speak, what we say. And I think Kubrick was very interested in that. And I think Eyes Wide Shut is probably his most penetrating analysis or observation of that reality, of that somnambulistic reality that is closer to real life than any type of realistic, quote-unquote, representation of how people actually are.
There's also a debate over whether Nicole has been to the party, or the Alice character.
I think she has.
Yes, I do too. That's the way I tend to lean in my analysis. And one of the key reasons for that, the scene where Tom comes home from one of his first sort of wandering excursions, and she's teaching the daughter mathematics, and she's subtly goading him when she tells the daughter, she says, so-and-so has this much money and so-and-so has way more money. She says something like that, and she looks up at him like, do you realize who you're interacting with? You're interacting with people that have like billions, and you might be a millionaire at the top of your doctor field in New York or whatever, but the people that so-and-so, in the math problem example, she's like, they have way more money. And that, I think, suggests that she knows what's going on.
And the way she's so seduced by the Hungarian older man at the party, she's almost in a trance when he's talking to her. And there's also little clues, like when they're at the party in the beginning and he says something along the lines of, why does Ziegler keep inviting us to his parties?
Yes.
It almost implies that the parties are specifically aimed for him and her. And the way that she's so connected when he comes home from the ritual, and she's been dreaming about it. And when she sees the military man and how she's just overwhelmed with sexual desire for this guy. And there's so many little hints that she herself was or is sex kitten, sex slave of some sort.
I think there could be something to the thesis too, that the daughter is sort of being prepped for that lifestyle. I mean, if we think about the name Alice, right? I mean, her name is Alice on purpose, so we have the inclusion of the sort of the tropes of mind control.
Goodness gracious, we're off to a good start. Everyone's doing a bang-up job out there. I don't know if any of you are checking your phones or anything, but I think a singularity might have occurred while that last segment on Eyes Wide Shut was playing. Your boy flipped out. He's feeling more like a man than ever before. A real man. Watching that last segment, I suddenly found myself attracted to mammary glands for the first time. We boys, we like mammaries, don't we? We like mammary glands. Right, yes. On to the next, as they say. Question number 2. Is there any truth to the rumor that one of the founders of NASA was a full-blown occultist? Or maybe it was Jet Propulsion Laboratories? Very specific, but I like it. Question number 2, we're off. simmer down now, simmer down. Of course, Flipped Out realizes that there are ladies out there that enjoy mammary glands as well. I fully get it. I understand. It's funny. I recently did an interview leading up to this event where I was asked, Flipped Out, are you heterosexual? Are you bisexual? My answer was this. Flipped Out is very much trisexual. I'll try anything. Yes, that's what I said. Oh, it was funny. I'm also reminded of the great Jerry Seinfeld joke on that episode of Seinfeld, where Jerry was discussing the concept of men having mammary glands. And Jerry said something like, it couldn't be that way. We'd never leave the house. We'd just be playing with them all day. Yeah, it was funnier when Jerry Seinfeld said it, of course. Anywho, we're 2 for 2, my friends. This is just outstanding so far, is it not? We've arrived at the third question. The third question of the evening is, what are your thoughts about NASA? Chef's Kiss or Shady Acres?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I'd like to bring to your attention a potential fraud on an enormous scale happening in your county. There's now clear evidence of NASA using numerous methods to grossly mislead the public about astronauts being on the International Space Station. During interior ISS scenes from NASA's own live feed, the use of wires, harnesses, green screens, and virtual reality have been detected to achieve the appearance of a weightless environment. Examples of this include astronauts fading in and out of the screen, green screen glitches, grabbing objects that aren't really there, pulling on invisible wires, getting tangled in their harnesses, and even astronauts appearing out of thin air. This begs the obvious question. If they're really up there, why are they using Hollywood techniques to fake the footage? During spacewalks, air bubbles have been recorded on numerous occasions. In 2013, astronaut Luca Parmitano nearly drowned during a spacewalk when his helmet filled with water. Now, what's really interesting is that they trained for spacewalks in an underwater pool with a complete ISS replica. Now, surely they aren't filming these spacewalks in an underwater pool and then editing them to appear if they're in space. I'm calling on the Brevard County Commissioners to open a full investigation into NASA's fraudulent practices and use of taxpayer dollars. It costs NASA $3 billion per year to operate the ISS, and if they don't have a darn good explanation as to why they're faking these videos, I and the public would like a darn good explanation as to where our tax money is going. And if they are indeed faking the funk, it is our duty to expose and eliminate this fraudulent and astronomically wasteful ISS program. And look, I know what you're all thinking. The NASA is part of the federal government and you're just county commissioners. Even if what I'm saying is true, what can you do? But let me remind you, not only is this happening in your county, as public officials, you have the platform and the ability to make a statement or hold a press conference, alerting the public, state, and federal authorities to investigate further. You have the power to start the conversation.
So if you were the rulers of the planet, the rich royal family, the 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of 1%, and you had your way, you controlled banking, you controlled everything. You have everything you want. You don't even need money because you create money. Ignorant people, are you going to teach them stuff that might challenge your authority? Are you going to teach them stuff that makes them realize who they are, where they are, what they are, the power of their minds? So the things that they tell us they are complete and total nonsense.
How about like Hale-Bopp?
Halley's Comet comes back every 76 years. Meanwhile, we're corkscrewing through space 4.4 billion miles a year. That thing goes away to who knows where, and then it finds us again. 4.4 billion times 76. That's how many miles away from where we were the last time it came. Somehow it finds us. Cool story, bro. Right? It's absolute nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
But think about this. You guys ever look up and see Jupiter, Mars, Venus?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. They're all brighter than any star. They're amazingly bright. But why are they lit? According to the helio-nonsensical BS model, they're reflecting sunlight, okay? So let's take Jupiter, for example. Jupiter, they tell us, is a gaseous planet, and it's damn far away and farther from the sun. So when we look up and we see the sun about the size of a nickel held at arm's length, okay? That's how we see the sun. But if you're on Jupiter, the sun's going to look like a large star at best. Maybe it'll be the size of like a pencil eraser held at arm's length. Okay? You have to believe that that small little sun in the distance is lighting up this gaseous, non-reflective planet, and then that light is bouncing back to Earth, brighter than any star. Does that make any sense to you?
It doesn't.
It doesn't make any sense at all. NASA shows us a clip of Jupiter with the clouds spinning in different directions. It was a probe that went by Jupiter. It's absolute nonsense. Scientifically, we can prove that that little tiny sun can't bounce off of a gaseous planet and come back and be brighter than any star in the sky. It doesn't work. There's also a problem called the inverse square law of light, which is light source, light reflected. Every time you double the distance, it's a quarter of the brightness, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Light only goes so far.
Mm-hmm.
Light only goes so far, and then it's spreading out, so it's getting weaker and weaker.
Yeah, of course.
Let's look at Polaris. So they tell us our sun is this giant ball and we're a tiny speck next to it.
Right.
So if the sun was just a mile in the sky, it would fill your entire sky, horizon to horizon. Then you move the sun 93 million miles away and it gets smaller due to perspective. It's now the size of a coin held at arm's length. What happens if I made that 8 times farther? 8 times the distance. It would be so small your eye couldn't see it.
Right.
At a light hour away, it is scientifically provable that the sun is infinitesimally smaller than anything our eye could resolve. Okay, just remember that. Now they tell us Polaris, our North Star, is 48 times bigger than the sun. So how do we make it equivalent? 48 times 1 light hour is 48 hours, 2 light days away. If Polaris was 2 light days away and the size that they tell us, forgetting the inverse square law problem, it would be infinitesimally too small to see. Great. You know how far they tell us Polaris is?
No.
Wait, yes?
2,000 light years away.
Good answer. 433 light years away.
Wow.
You cannot fathom. Your brain is incapable at this point of actually understanding what that number is. Let's look at another thing. The closest star is Alpha Centauri. It's 4.5 light years, about 25 trillion miles away. All of the other stars are magnitudes farther. That's our next door neighbor, and his next door neighbor isn't even that close. So the closest star is Alpha Centauri. Let's pretend we're going to go to Alpha Centauri, and I put you in a rocket ship, and you're traveling a mile per second. No human has ever gone a mile per second. A mile per second, 3,600 miles an hour. If you went a mile per second for 100 seconds, how many miles have you gone? Easy. Mile per second, 100 seconds.
100 miles. Yeah.
100 miles. Very easy. So if you went for a trillion seconds, how many miles have you gone?
Trillion miles.
So after 1 trillion seconds, you're 1/25th of the way to the closest star. You with me?
Yes.
Wow.
After 1 trillion seconds, traveling at a ridiculous speed, you're 1/25th of the way to the closest star. Now we'll switch. How long have you been traveling? And don't say 1 trillion seconds. How long is 1 trillion seconds? How much time is 1 trillion seconds?
I couldn't even fathom.
Give you a Bitcoin if you can guess it within a day. Take a stab.
Where's that calculator?
No calculator. Trillion seconds. Just take a guess.
I don't know, 50 years?
All right. And you want to take a guess too?
75 years.
Very close. 31,000 years. Okay? 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years, and you are only 1/25th of the way to the closest star, and you believe that your eye can see that star, and that star is bright enough to see? Give me a break.
Yeah.
It's absolute insanity.
Now, I grew up as somebody that always believed we went to the moon. I really didn't have any reason to doubt it. I saw the pictures. I saw the video. I saw the astronauts talking about it. I saw all that stuff. So I was a believer. And I liked it, by the way. I liked the idea that we went to the moon. I liked the idea that we went to the moon as Americans. That's pretty cool. On top of that, I'm not a big rah-rah America guy, but I am an American. To be a human being and have somebody from the human race make it to another celestial body like the moon it's the greatest achievement in human history. It's the greatest thing that we as a people from a technological standpoint have ever done. But there are a lot of questions about whether or not those landings actually happened. I don't want to believe that it was a gigantic scam. I really don't. But I can't come to any other conclusion than that. And I'm going to go through some information about the moon landing. And I'll let you decide. Because like I said, this is the one conspiracy that I want to believe. Everything about it is a positive. So I am predisposed to want this to be true. But if I'm being intellectually honest about it, I have to admit that there are some major problems with the story. There's some major problems with the current version of reality at NASA that deeply contradicts their moon landing stories. It's not even me saying it. It's their own guys within their own organization are starting to say things that contradict the official story. And some incidents have happened at NASA that you just have to ask the question, what is really going on here? It's not unpatriotic to question this. I know a lot of Americans are very attached to it, and I understand. This one's sloppy, and there's a lot of problems with the official story. A lot of problems with the official story. This landing has been shrouded in mystery for the better part of half a century. In 2006, NASA admitted that they could not locate the authentic video copy of the July 20th, 1969 moon landing. The historical recording was part of 200,000 tapes of this event. 200,000 tapes were magnetically erased and reused by NASA in order to save money, according to Dick Nafzger, an engineer at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. He says, "I don't think anyone in the NASA organization did anything wrong. It slipped through the cracks and nobody's happy about it." You don't think anybody did anything wrong? They went and erased and recorded over the most important event in human history, and nobody did anything wrong? I want you to be objective about this for a second. Are we painting over the Mona Lisa? Because this is what they're asking us to believe, that we took the tapes of the most important event in the history of human beings and we recorded over it to save money. NASA gets $53 million a day. Stan Lebar, the designer of the lunar video camera used by Neil Armstrong and the astronauts on the moon, he said, "So I don't believe that the tapes exist today at all. It was a hard thing to accept, but there is just an overwhelming amount of evidence that led us to believe that they just don't exist anymore. And you have to accept reality." No. You know what? Actually, this isn't reality. It's bullshit. What about the reels and reels of telemetry data from the launch of the Apollo rockets? It seems like there would be a ton of important information there to be examined, right? I mean, nope. NASA says those tapes got lost too. This is such an insulting lie that it starts this process with a lot of people of saying, okay, if this is your official story for this, then we have to examine every story you've ever told us because this is certified grade A dog shit.
Called the Orion Multipurpose Crew Vehicle, or MPCV, this next-generation spacecraft will enable America to explore beyond low Earth orbit.
So, NASA promotion video says this: the next generation spacecraft will enable America to explore beyond low Earth orbit. That'd be great if we could explore beyond low Earth orbit, except for those 7 trips that we took to the moon. 50 years ago. Didn't we explore beyond low Earth orbit 50 years ago? What's the next generation going to do? Did the Apollo missions actually go to the moon in 1969 in the equivalent of a Volkswagen Beetle? Could they actually fly and land on the moon in a spaceship that had the computing power that today we would find in a handheld calculator? Were they able to go through the Van Allen radiation belts? Well, let's hear what Kelly Smith has to say about this.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Hey, Kelly, quick question if you don't mind. Didn't we already send people through this region of space dozens of times from 1969 to 1972 when they went to the moon on the Apollo missions? What do you mean we need to solve these challenges before sending people through this region of space? I'm a bit confused.
Plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today. And it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go.
Colonel Terry Virts, International Space Station Commander, during an interview while inside the International Space Station. Right now, we can fly in low Earth orbit. That's the farthest we can go. Well, there's a problem because low Earth orbit is not quite far enough to get you to the moon. Low Earth orbit is, I think, 400 miles up, anywhere up to 400 miles. The moon is allegedly 237,000 miles from Earth.
Goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
And unlike the previous program, we are setting a course with specific and achievable milestones. Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
Why did the people at NASA keep saying we've got to figure out these problems before we go out of low Earth orbit or before we go through the Van Allen radiation belt, which extends from 1,000 miles outside of Earth to 25,000 miles outside of Earth? It's one of those, it's like a magnetic shield around the planet. Once Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, and Neil Armstrong returned from the moon, one thing jumps out when you see this press conference, and I'll paint the picture for you. You've got the press conference is the three of them, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins. They're sitting next to one another at a table, and it's just the three of them coming back to the planet, and there's a media audience, and there's cameras pointed at them. They're being interviewed after they've come back. And they look like hostages. There is not a single smile. Their jaws are clenched. They're sitting there with their hands folded together. And Neil Armstrong looks like he wants to throw up during the whole thing. And I know that doesn't mean anything. It's an unnatural reaction to having achieved the greatest moment in human history and finally getting a chance to tell the world what you saw and what you did. And these guys look like they want to be anywhere else but there. Anywhere else but there. I feel like if they had pulled the camera back a bit, you would have seen guns behind their heads. You know what I mean? It's incongruent with how you would behave when you came back from something like this. And then add into the fact that Neil Armstrong did like 2 interviews over the next 50 years. All of them became tremendous alcoholics. Michael Collins hid from everybody. Neil Armstrong hid from everybody. The unlikable Bryant Gumbel conducted an interview with Michael Collins on the 25th anniversary of the moon landing, and he said, "Mike Collins, but for a day, how often are you reminded of your achievement?" Michael Collins' response was, "Well, if I go out back and look up in the sky and see the moon, either I can remember where I was 20 years ago, or I can pretend I've never been there. It works for me either way." Huh? What kind of weird answer is that? I mean, even you can remember where I was 20 years ago, or you can pretend that you've never been there? How is that an answer to what it's like to be one of the astronauts that went to the moon? What are you talking about? You can pretend like you've never been there. Have you never been there? We've got problems with the pictures that they took on the moon, because if you just take your iPhone out and you shoot a bunch of pictures of things during the course of a day, you're going to get some blurry ones. You know what's interesting about the NASA pictures? They all came out perfect. Did a hell of a job. That Stan Lebar, man, he created a great camera, didn't he? Every picture seems to come out perfectly centered and not blurry or anything like that. The camera was mounted to the chest of Buzz Aldrin. So you didn't hold it up in front of your face and aim it. Whatever direction you were looking, that's what you shot. And I'll tell you, those pictures came out really good for somebody that was just winging it. Not to mention, they took so many pictures on that moon trip. I think the math works out to they would have to have taken a picture every 4 seconds, I think. Even during the time when they were supposed to, be sleeping or, not, in the capsule and not outside. The math on the photographs don't add up. You've got problems with the backgrounds, several backgrounds being exactly the same, which of course starts to drag people into, was this front screen projection? And people that understand Stanley Kubrick's work will know that he pioneered front screen projection. And the signatures of front screen projection are all over the photographs from the moon.
It has been quite an evening. There's no doubt this has been a learn-about session for all of us. You've been entertained. I know this. You might have been challenged. There's still more, too. We're coming up on one last doozy of a question. It's also from a personal standpoint. I've entered the studio tonight as an AI, artificially intelligent robot, and I'm leaving as a man. It's been quite a Pinocchio-like tale, hasn't it? And things have really turned around for me in just this evening. I was created for this very event. I didn't exist literally before the end of days Q&As was conceived, and with the help of Dr. Willoughby Wadoops, who got me up to speed, I'm hosting this evening, but that was my first gig. I've already been invited to co-host a telethon at the Laugh Factory in world-famous Los Angeles, California. I'll be co-hosting with Paula Poundstone and Henry Winkler, and flipped out. A few agencies have called already. It's just everything's getting so big. It's a lot to handle, a lot to take in, as they say. But enough of me, enough of flipped out, okay? I've said enough tonight. I've said too much. This last question is sure to be life-changing for all of us humans, like me and you. Roll it! Are we officially in the end times? And if not, what do you think the future of humankind looks like?
Please say hello to Jim Carrey. Is that a gang sign? Have you,
Oh, like you don't know what it is. You don't know what that is.
I have no idea.
You don't know. Jimmy Fallon doesn't know. David Letterman doesn't know.
We don't know.
All the comics and show business don't know what this is. Right? Yeah.
What is it?
Come on, Jimmy. Seriously, the time is up. People are hip to this kind of stuff. I'm here tonight to blow the lid off it, to be the whistleblower. I'm sick and tired of the secrets and the lies. It is the secret symbol of the Illuminati, and you're a part of it, and it is the all-mocking tongue.
Oh, I like it. It is a scraping.
It's the symbol of the all-mocking tongue, and I'm sick of it. I want everybody to be in on the joke, man. You know what I mean? Like, for years now, talk show hosts, people on television, people in sitcoms have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh and stuff like that, make you happy and docile so you don't know what's really going on. You know, when they get out there in the woods in a circle naked and they decide these things and, you know, and look at him trying to come it up. It's hilarious. And, you know, and I'm sick of, hold on a second. You know what they're trying to do?
Who?
This thing is buzzing. Hold on. They're trying to turn us into, you know, consumer drones of some sort. Hold on, I just got to get this.
And yeah.
Yeah, listen, I'm in the middle of blowing the lid off some...
What happened?
I'm sorry, Jimmy. I was temporarily interrupted by my iPhone 6 Plus. I think what I was really trying to say was I think people will enjoy Dumb and Dumber this weekend.
And that is what I thought you were about to say.
They should all go to the theater tomorrow and see it. Because we could use a good laugh. Ha, 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 ha.
So I've always been looking at public ritual because there's never been a culture or society in human history that doesn't carry out public ritual. It's just a question of how, what the symbolism is exactly and what the purposes of it. But I remember the thing that really struck me is back in 2016, the Gothard Tunnel opening. It looked like something from Pat Robertson's worst 80s nightmare. It's like it's got this devil and these people are slaves and they're all chained together, and then there's a big giant eye outside and there's like ghostly figures and all this stuff, and I was just like looking and going, all right, this is next level now. The program has been accelerated. And then, I've seen all this, particularly since that time with the Super Bowl and so on, and the Olympics as well. So it's like the symbolism of these public rituals has just gotten more and more sorcerous, become more and more connected to like the mystery religions and to ceremonial magic and to all these things. This is not anything new. Versions of this have been operating since there was a United States of America. But I do start to think like, well, why would they do this? And then it suddenly occurred to me, it's like they do it because it works. Somehow they get the results that they want. Sure. You wouldn't go through all this time and money expense to carry out these very specific rituals with this very specific symbolism if you weren't getting the desired results from them. If they weren't working out the way you wanted to work. You look at the prevalence of secret societies and so on. One thing I'm looking at is all this Mithraic symbolism, and just saw a lot of pretty explicit Mithraic symbolism at the Olympics, and all the people near the top of the pyramid who seem to have a special fondness for Mithraism. For instance, the Bloomberg people, the Bloomberg Corporation, putting an actual Mithraic temple that was excavated in the basement of the futuristic headquarters in London. That's making a statement. AT&T has a Mithraic icon in their world headquarters, which is 3 blocks away from Dealey Plaza. It's this stuff that runs things, and the rest of it is just, it's like the means, and that's why I call it the plumbing. The technology and the science is just the plumbing, but it's the sorcery that's the base code.
Nama corraptibus tutela Mercurii. Nama Patri tutela Saturni. Nama Neptis tutela Veneris. Nama Patri tutela Saturni. Nama Militibus tutela Martis. Nama Patri tutela Saturni. Nama Leonibus tutela Nobis. Nama Patri tutela Saturni. Nama Persis tutela Dune. Nama Patri tutela Saturni. Nama Elionis tutela Solis. Nama Patri tutela Saturni. Nama Patribus Orientem Saturni. Nama Patribus Orientem
We were sold all these science fictional fantasies of where this stuff was all going, but really technological progress stopped a while ago. It just stopped dead in its tracks a while ago. And a lot of it is really kind of bound by the laws of physics. The laws of physics are going to define the upper limit of your computing power. But also, all this other stuff, like, I don't know, just all these fantasies they have of, again, like the Jetsons. And, physics really are going to determine the feasibility of that. These ideas that we had of this urbanized Jetsons kind of future, it doesn't work, it's never going to work. You cannot separate spirit and nature. And I don't think you can have a truly holistic and meaningful spirituality without nature. The singularity is never going to happen, ever. Because if we do survive this collective car crash we're all headed for, the only way we're going to rebuild is by taking a much different and more stringent relationship to technology. Look at all your sci-fi, look at all your Star Trek, look at all the, your robots, and just throw it all in the garbage. Nobody's ever going to another star system. It's just absolutely ludicrous. I don't think we're ever going to go past the moon, if that, right? It's like nobody's going anywhere. You know what I mean? This is our home. This is our home. We have everything we need. This planet is unimaginably huge. There's enough for everybody. Everything we need is here. This world is huge. There's enough for everybody. Every living soul on this planet, there's enough land to build homes, plant food, grow food, you name it. There's enough for everybody. Just take a plane over the country at night and just see how few lights you see down there, and how all the lights you see, the electric lights you see down there, are all sort of these little clusters, these little hives. Say you're going to go to California from New York, right? And you're going to go over that Martian landscape of the Southwest, and you can go hours without seeing shit. The world is empty. In order for people to control other people, they need to cluster them all in together. And that's why this whole Agenda 2030 nonsense and Great Reset, our science and our technology is mostly lies, mostly fictitious. People are sort of deceived by a constant stream of fake headlines that are fed to the popular science press. And when I see like the same bullshit headlines that I saw back in the 80s being recycled again and again, these technological miracles that never, ever, ever materialize. Just to give you one example, since I was a preteen hearing that, we're just around the corner from a moon colony. There's never going to be a colony on the moon, ever. It's never going to happen. No, nobody's going anywhere, like I said. Because it's just like, where are you going to go? Forget about flat Earth and all this other shit. It's just like, just look at things at face value. Just look at the way things are presented to us. You go to the moon, where are you going to get your water? Where do you get your water? Okay, you're gonna send like giant spaceships, giant rockets filled with water. This is like one of the things. It's just like this whole fictitious Star Trek nonsense. The illusion of linear progress has to be maintained at all costs. Look at this thing with like these quote unquote space missions. The Bezos one with the big flying penis. Programs have been in development since the early 2000s, right? And where do they get to? They don't even get to like low Earth orbit. We're talking like 400 miles below low Earth orbit. They just went up into the upper atmosphere, basically. It's pathetic. And everybody's like, they went to space. It's like, they didn't go anywhere near space. They just went like a little higher, comparatively, than like what the U-2 spy planes was doing in the early 60s. They didn't even go anywhere near space. They didn't go anywhere near where the shuttle would go. And they were still very, very comfortably and safely within Earth's atmosphere. Nowhere near space. But where are you going to go? Nobody's going anywhere. It's just never going to happen because there's no reason for it to happen. Let's just take everything at face value, everything as it's presented to us, right? So you go to the moon, which has no water, and you're going to die. You go to Mars, which has no water and has no magnetic field and no sunlight, and you're gonna die. It's just crazy. It's just absolute insanity. It's just like there's nowhere to go and there's nothing to do. And you tell me that people are gonna like fly out for 6 months or however long it's gonna take them to get to Mars? It's absolutely insane. And I got to tell you, this is going to sound like a bit of a diversion, but because social media offers us this distorted mirror, and it almost reminds me of Moloch, like we don't recognize it as such, but we're sacrificing our children to this machine of, this Moloch machine where, in the olden days, people would just sacrifice their children because they thought they would gain a good harvest or become rich or a desirable lover or so on. And when you look at these individuals who aren't like the most hardy specimens that you can imagine, it really does start to remind me of like sickly children being exposed, the Greeks and the Romans and so on, or the Canaanites, Phoenicians, Carthaginians sacrificing their children on these tofets, these furnaces. And the furnace to me today, in so many different ways, is social media and so on. And what we saw in the ancient world was like this breakdown of gender roles and gender identities. We're seeing that again today. So I think this whole idea of like Captain Marvel, or you're not the Avengers, or you're not Harry Potter, or you're not, I don't know, the Powerpuff Girls. I mean, you name it. It's had like this incredible negative knock-on effect. You know, I anticipated how superhero culture would become mainstream, but I was like, well, where does it go from there? I couldn't figure out where it was going to proceed to other than this whole idea of transhumanism. You know, at the time when I was naive, I thought was real. We've been experimenting on our children for over 30 years now, and the results are disastrous. But because transhuman isn't real, I think we need to just like reboot everything, because, and not only in our children, but our culture, because, you know, our children, we send them to these horrible schools where they're taught all this nonsense, all this toxic nonsense, and then they get out into the real world and they don't know how to do anything. This is one of the things when I talk about collapse. I mean, this is something that I've been watching for a long time. A system is only as effective as the people who work inside it. You know, so you're asking me about Ukraine. It's like, well, why is Ukraine such a total clusterfuck? Well, it's because the people in the White House are mostly like these young activist types who, you know, all the older people are terrified of, who don't know how to do anything. Not only do they not know how to do anything, but they're also lazy. They're incredibly lazy. They're lazy and entitled and have no tangible skill set. This is what really worries me. This is so much more prevalent on the coasts than it is, say, in certain like heartland places where it's still like, you know, you go to school to learn things. You don't go to school to study gender theory or something. We are just in so much trouble. And I got to tell you right now, who have no concept of the issues at hand, but are just totally manipulated by Hollywood and big tech. And I know this will sound very pessimistic, but I don't think democracy can survive people who vote to vote for their party. I don't think it can survive that. We need people who are going to get up in the cherry pickers during a hurricane to fix the phone lines or the cable lines or the power line in positions of power. They don't handle opposition very well. Maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I got to tell you, I don't see it happening, because look what happened to Build Back Better. Remember Build Back Better? Remember everybody was saying Build Back Better, Build Back Better? What the hell happened to that? You know what I mean? I mean, and now people, they might have even alluded to this in the Intercept article. It's like disaster. You know, that never even, everybody's admitting that was just a total, left the port. You know, it sank at the docks, basically. And why did it sink at the docks? Because the people running the Rockefeller Republican Party, aka the Democrats, people running all these agencies and departments and so on, they're not bright, they're not tough, and they can't deal with stress. And COVID's made them very, very lazy. For, you know, it's like musical chairs, right? The Rockefeller Republicans were sort of driven out of the party in the 60s by the whole Goldwater Reagan faction. But then they decided, well, you know, they were fighting to gain back power. And they said, well, why don't we just take over the Democrats? Because that party's a mess, you know? We'll just take that party over. But they didn't realize that, you know, one of the reasons why the Democratic Party was a mess is that it's not really a party, it's parties. You know, it's sort of this conglomeration of all these different parties with all these people who essentially hate each other, and they just hate middle America worse, you know what I mean? But it gets to the point, they're not going to be able to handle stress. The media is fucked. All these companies have lost half their value in the past year. Netflix has lost 70% of their value in the past year. And Netflix was sort of like the showpiece for woke capitalism, right?
Right.
And they're sinking faster than anyone now. And they put all this woke crap on. People hated it. People left the service in droves. And now they've lost 70% of their value. If you invested in Netflix back a couple years ago, you've been wiped out. You're gone. Your money is just gone. And God forbid, you know, you have Netflix in your 401k. It's just gone. It's over. So they're raising interest rates again. You know, millennials and Gen Zers, just, you know, I'm a Gen X. I grew up in the 70s, well, 70s and 80s. I was very aware, you know, I was very aware from a very young age. And, you know, I remember what the 70s was like. You know, I remember like government cheese and food stamps and all this kind of stuff. I don't think most people your age or younger have any experience with that. They don't have any experience with like real major want. And I don't know if they're going to be able to deal with it.
Well, people should start armoring up themselves right now. That's what I would say. I mean, we probably have a long tail on this collapse, and you got time to grow some fruit trees and get yourself some land and get out of the city.
Get out of the city. Apps, anybody listening to this, if you're in a city, get out. Any city, get out.
Yeah.
Cities are going to be the absolute worst place to be in the next 5 to 10 years.
I agree.
I mean, it's going to be worse than the 70s. I mean, I remember like the 70s, like what New York and Detroit and Philadelphia and, all these major cities were like, and they're all reverting back to that mean. If you're in a city, get out. Get out of the city. I'm not kidding. I'm deadly serious about this. Get out. And, if you can homestead, do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a tough go. It's a tough life.
It is, but having nothing and never being happier is a tougher life, I think. And that's the life that's being presented to us. So
I think that the multipolar world is going to be a good thing. I think that when we're not wasting all our money trying to enforce our will militarily on the entire planet, I think we'll have a lot more money to fix all the bridges and the subway tunnels and all that good stuff. It's going to take some pain to get there. But I'm not a pessimistic person. I'm always a long run optimist, and I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that I'm 55 years old and I've just kind of seen a lot, and I see the cycles. I see how things repeat, and I've studied history. So it's just nobody can tell you that things are going to be A-okay for the next few years. They're not, particularly in the next 2 years. But on the other end of that, I think things are going to correct themselves, and we're going to sort of return to, I'm not saying we're going to return to the 50s or the 40s or whatever. I think we're going to return to a world more like a multipolar world where people make things at home and grow things at home and not expect peasants down in El Salvador to grow all their food